The city was a bruise-colored canvas that evening, all soft grays and muted blues bleeding into the rear-view mirror. Rain had stopped hours ago, leaving the streets slick and reflecting the neon haze of the downtown core like shattered jewels. It was the kind of atmosphere that naturally makes people quiet, makes them look inward instead of outward. My name is Arthur, and I've been driving these streets for nearly 40 years. First with a medallion, now with an app on a screen. 40 years is enough time to see the whole human parade pass through your back seat, each person a chapter, some mundane, some breathtakingly sad. You learn to listen to silence as much as conversation. Sometimes the silence tells you everything you need to know. The ping came through around 8 p.m. A pickup on the edge of the financial district near a cluster of those trendy glass and steel apartment towers where the young professionals live out their ambitious lives. The name on the screen was simply Sarah. I pulled up to the curb. There she was, standing under the awning, clutching a small, worn paper bag to her chest, the kind you get from a specialty bakery. She wasn't looking at her phone. She was just staring down at the wet sidewalk. She looked small against the towering buildings, like a lost piece of a puzzle. I tapped the horn lightly, just a courtesy puff. She looked up, her face pale in the faint light. When she got into the back seat, she didn't slam the door, which I always appreciate. It was a gentle, almost hesitant click, a quiet sign of respect for the world, maybe, or maybe just a sign of exhaustion. "Good evening, Sarah," I said, confirming the name without turning my head. The destination was a residential area, quite a distance away, almost out in the suburbs. A long trip, good for the fare, maybe not so good for the soul if she planned to be one of those passengers. "Hi, Arthur," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. It was strained, brittle, like dry leaves crunching underfoot. I glanced in the rear-view mirror. It was just a quick, professional flicker of my eyes. That's when I saw it. The dark smudges beneath her eyes weren't makeup. Her cheeks were wet. She was crying. Not the loud, messy, shaking shoulders kind of crying, but the silent, persistent kind. The kind that flows down a face like a slow, steady leak from a broken pipe. The kind that comes from a grief so deep, it's just part of your breathing now. I immediately retracted the usual introductory question, the one about the weather or the traffic. Some conversations are best left unstarted. I pulled away from the curb smoothly, letting the low hum of the engine and the rhythmic shh of the wipers become the only sound in the car. This was my first emotional trigger of the night, the silent recognition of pain. It's a delicate moment. You have to acknowledge it without prying, offer comfort through competence. A smooth drive is often the best medicine I can offer. We drove for a solid 15 minutes, crossing bridges and navigating the grid of the city, and the silence held. It was the heaviest silence I'd felt in months. I could feel the tension radiating off her back seat like heat off hot asphalt. She hadn't adjusted the air, hadn't asked about the radio, hadn't even checked her phone. She was just present in her sorrow, and I was the reluctant keeper of it. I caught her reflection again. She had tilted her head back against the headrest, her eyes closed now, but the tears kept coming. They tracked paths through the powder on her cheeks. The small paper bag was still clutched tightly. I wondered what was inside. A forgotten memory, a tribute, something meant for someone who wouldn't receive it. A flicker of empathy, a genuine warmth, started to spread in my chest. I'm an old man. I've seen things. I've lost people. I know the shape of that kind of emptiness. It's not a hole. It's a negative space where something wonderful used to be. I felt the first surge of pathos, a quiet, internal ache for her suffering. I decided to try a soft probe, a neutral question that could be answered with one word or a torrent, whichever she chose. "Slow night for me," I said, keeping my voice low and steady, focused on the road ahead. "But I don't mind the long trips. Gives a man time to think, or just appreciate the quiet." She inhaled sharply, a little hitch in her breath that sounded like a small gasp of air on a sinking ship. "It is quiet," she managed, her voice thick and trembling. Another 10 minutes passed. We were now on the highway, the streetlights blurring into streaks of gold and white. The city noise receded, replaced by the steady rush of the wind past the windows. The rhythm of the drive became a kind of hypnotic lullaby. This is often when people feel safe enough to speak, The anonymity of the back seat, the forward momentum, the knowledge that you'll soon be gone from this stranger's life, it can be incredibly freeing. Finally, she spoke again, her voice still thin, but with a new texture. Resignation, perhaps, or a desperate need to let the words out. "I'm sorry, Arthur. I should probably pull myself together. It's just been a day." I kept my eyes ahead. No sudden movements, no pitying glances in the mirror, just a calm, non-judgmental reply. This was the moment to offer the safe harbor. "There's nothing to apologize for, Sarah," I said gently. "This car is a neutral zone. Whatever you need to feel, feel it. I've seen it all. I've driven people to hospitals to meet babies, and I've driven them from cemeteries after saying goodbye. Life is a lot of both. I just drive the miles in between." That simple validation seemed to break something in her. The floodgates didn't burst, but the flow increased. She started to speak, not to me, but into the space between us. A soft, halting monologue. I just bought this cake, a small one, from his favorite place. We used to always get the same silly chocolate kind. Today would have been his birthday." The words hung in the air, heavy and perfectly clear. His birthday, a date that was once a celebration, now a painful milestone of absence. I felt the second, deeper emotional trigger, the relatability of loss. Not necessarily the same loss, but the common human experience of a day that should be joyous, turning into a monument of sorrow. I allowed another moment of silence. I didn't want to rush her. "He was 32, she continued, a whisper so low I almost missed it over the road noise. "Accident. Last year. It still feels like a bad joke. Like he's just away on a long trip and I just haven't heard the ring of his phone in a while." I thought about my own wife, Eleanor. Gone almost 8 years now. A long, slow fade, not a sudden crash, but the absence is the same. It's the furniture of your life rearranged, and you keep bumping into the empty spaces where things used to be. I kept my tone steady, grounding, drawing on the wisdom of my age and experience. "When you love someone like that, Sarah, the calendar doesn't just let go of them," I mused, keeping my language reflective, not directive. Every day is just a day, but those milestone days, the birthdays, the anniversaries, those are the days when the absent shows up wearing a suit and sits right down in the chair next to you. It demands attention. She gave a small, wet laugh that was more of a choked sob. "That's exactly it, Arthur. It demands attention." I keep thinking, I should be doing something. I should be celebrating. It feels wrong to just let the day pass. It would feel wrong to celebrate too, I countered softly. "Not really celebrating. It's a tightrope walk, Sarah. The best we can do is just acknowledge the weight of it. You bought the cake. That's your way of acknowledging him. That's a beautiful, honest gesture. You're keeping him alive in the only way you can now, through memory and ritual." This exchange was the beginning of the upward surge of the emotional rhythm. It wasn't about escalating drama, but escalating intimacy and connection. We had moved past the stranger in a cab phase. We were two human beings sharing a universal truth about love and time. The destination was approaching. A quiet, tree-lined street with older, well-maintained homes. "What was his name?" I asked finally, a question I felt earned after the miles we had shared. She took a deep, shuddering breath, a cleansing breath. "His name was Ben. He loved terrible sci-fi movies, and he had this laugh that could make me forget every bad thing in the world." "Ben," I repeated, giving the name the respect of a pause. "That's a good name, and it sounds like he left you a good memory to hang on to." I pulled to a gentle stop in front of a modest house with a porch light on. I kept the engine running. The trip was technically over, but the conversation wasn't. She sat up finally, wiping her face with the sleeve of her coat. She seemed steadier. The tears had slowed to a complete stop. "Thank you, Arthur," she said, her voice stronger now, just slightly husky. "I don't know why I told you all that. I haven't really told anyone." "Because I was driving, Sarah," I said, letting a small, gentle smile touch my lips. "And sometimes the person driving is the easiest person in the world to talk to. We don't have any skin in your game. We're just the vessel for the journey." She reached for the door handle. The little paper bag clutched tight. As she opened the door, A faint scent of rich chocolate cake wafted into the car, a bittersweet perfume. The silence that followed Sarah's departure was a different kind of quiet than the one we started with. It was residual, not heavy, like the gentle hum after a strong bell has rung. She closed the door, and I watched in the side mirror as she walked slowly up the short path to the front door of her house, the small cake bag still held close. She paused on the porch, fumbling slightly for her key, and then disappeared inside. She never looked back. That's usually how it goes. They leave their story behind, and you drive away with the echo of it. I checked the app. Trip completed, 5 stars. A nice tip came through a few moments later, a generous one, the kind that says, "Thank you for more than just the ride." I pulled away from the curb, letting the engine idle quietly for a moment, savoring the feeling of having been truly present for someone, even if just for a half hour and 30-odd miles. This subtle feeling of purpose was the initial decelerating trigger, a moment of reflective calm after the intensity of her grief. I had listened, and in listening, I had maybe eased her burden just a fraction. I was heading back toward the city center, following the main artery in a slow, thoughtful drive. My mind was still on Sarah and Ben, 32, so young. The unfairness of life is what truly stings. I've reached an age where every sunrise feels like a bonus, a gift I treat with respect. But when you're 32, you operate with the arrogant certainty of endless time. You don't think about the sudden stops. As I drove, I started to process the memory, filtering it through my own history. I recalled the first birthday of my Eleanor after she passed. I'd driven straight to the florist, bought a ridiculous bouquet of her favorite peonies, and sat in the cemetery talking to the stone marker like she was just running late. It was a miserable, essential ritual. I understood Sarah's need for the cake, the ritual of the purchase, the carrying of it. It's an anchor to the world that used to be. That connection between her small gesture and my past sorrow sparked the next crescendo of emotion, the shared human condition of ritualized grief. It wasn't pity anymore. It was deep kinship. My phone chimed, dragging me back to the present. Another request. Not far from where I was, just a couple of neighborhoods over. The name was Mark. The pickup location was a brightly lit late-night convenience store. Not a usual spot for a long, reflective journey, but the night was young, and I still had juice in the battery and life left in my shift. I pulled into the parking lot. Mark was already outside, standing next to a beaten-up Ford pickup that looked like it hadn't been washed since the last millennium. Mark himself was a big man, maybe mid-40s, wearing work boots, jeans, and a faded flannel shirt. He had a weary look about him, the look of a man who worked hard, long hours, and was carrying the weight of more than just a toolbox. He got into the back seat without a word. Not rude, just efficient. He tossed a small backpack onto the seat beside him. The destination was a truck stop right off the highway, about 45 minutes out of the city. A different kind of trip entirely. "Evening, Mark," I said, the usual greeting. "Evening, driver," he mumbled back, his voice rough like gravel rolling down a hill. He sounded physically and mentally drained. We pulled out onto the road. The atmosphere in the car was instantly different from Sarah's. Hers was fragile and sorrowful. Mark's was heavy and dull like old lead. He didn't seem sad exactly, he seemed depleted, like a reservoir that had been completely emptied. I noticed his hands. They were resting on his knees, large, scarred and calloused. He kept rubbing his thumb slowly over the knuckles of his index finger, a repetitive, almost compulsive movement. A nervous habit. A tension that hadn't been released. I decided on silence again, but this silence felt different. It was less about respecting grief and more about acknowledging a professional, working man's exhaustion. We drove through a stretch of dark industrial roads, past closed warehouses and silent loading docks. The change in scenery matched the change in mood. We were moving from emotional fragility to solid, weary reality. Then Mark spoke, and his words were abrupt, cutting through the silence like a dropped tool. "Long day, man. Too damn long." "I hear you," I replied easily. "Seems like those days come around more often than they used to." He snorted, a dry, humorless sound. "You got that right. 10 years I've been driving this damn route, hauling cargo nobody gives a damn about. And for what? to be paid late, and asked to do more. The conversation was purely transactional, focused on work and frustration. This was the second decelerating trigger, a sudden shift from deep personal emotion to mundane workaday stress. It pulled the emotional arc down sharply, grounding the narrative in the grittier reality of life. I offered a neutral observation. Driving long routes can take a toll. It takes a certain kind of toughness to stick with it. Toughness or stupidity, he muttered, adjusting himself in the seat. I used to love it. Used to feel like I was really moving something, making a difference. Now it just feels like I'm moving away from everything that matters. Now that caught my ear. Moving away from everything that matters. That's not just work fatigue. That's a deep, existential weariness. The quiet tension in the car started to thicken again, and I felt the subtle upward shift in the emotional arc. We were moving from external complaints to internal ones. I steered the conversation gently back toward the personal, using his own words as the hook. Moving away from what, Mark? I asked softly. If you don't mind me asking. Home? Family? He hesitated for a long time. I could see his profile in the rearview mirror, his jaw clenched. His thumb stopped rubbing his knuckles. My kids, he finally admitted, his voice barely audible over the tire noise. They're grown now, mostly. But my youngest, my girl, Lily, she's 5. We split up last year, her mother and I. Bad split, ugly. And now I'm on the road 5 days a week, and I only see her on the weekends. And half the time I'm so damn tired, I'm not even there when I'm there, you know? The weight of his confession settled heavily into the back seat, contrasting sharply with the earlier one. Sarah was mourning a past love lost to fate. Mark was mourning a present love lost to circumstance and distance. Both were suffering the sting of absence. I recognized the pain of paternal regret and longing, a powerful rising emotional trigger. This kind of regret, the feeling that you are failing the people you love because you're too busy providing for them, is a classic burden carried by working men. It's a tragedy of priorities, enforced by necessity. It's the hardest balance there is, Mark, I acknowledged, letting him know he was heard. The need to earn and the need to be present. It feels like you're failing one to succeed at the other, but you're on the road because you love her. You're doing this for Lily, even if it hurts you both right now. He sighed deeply. Yeah, I tell myself that, but I miss bedtime. I miss the silly questions and that little voice on the phone. When she asks why I can't stay and I don't have a good answer, he rubbed his eyes with his large hands. She knows you love her, Mark. 5-year-olds are smart. They know who shows up, and you're showing up every weekend, tired or not. That kind of effort, that's a promise she'll remember long after the new shoes are worn out. The absence is what makes the presence matter more. I paused, realizing the car was getting a little warm. I reached forward and slightly adjusted the climate control, a small, practical gesture of care. I remember when my son was about that age, I continued, sharing a small piece of my own past to build trust. He asked me once why I kept driving the cab all night, why I couldn't be a daytime dad. I told him I was fighting dragons for him, that every mile I drove was a piece of treasure I brought back to make his world safe. He never forgot that. Maybe you need to find your dragon, Mark. Something simple you can tell Lily. He was silent for a few minutes, digesting the thought. The car filled with a comfortable shared silence, a sense of two men recognizing the constraints of their lives. We were reaching the truck stop, a vast, brightly lit oasis on the side of the dark highway. Fighting dragons, he repeated, a slow, thoughtful smile touching the corners of his mouth. I like that. Maybe I'll tell her I'm building a secret fortress for her when I'm out here. A fortress is a good dragon fight, I agreed. I pulled up to the main entrance of the truck stop. He leaned forward to grab his backpack. Thanks, Arthur, he said, his voice surprisingly clear and grateful. Thanks for that. I needed that tonight. Drive safe, Mark, I replied. And go build that fortress. He nodded, opened the door, and stepped out, the weary slump in his shoulders slightly less pronounced than when he got in. He walked toward the main doors of the stop, a silhouette carrying a small backpack, and hopefully a new story for his daughter. The truck stop faded into the darkness behind me as I merged back onto the highway, heading toward the bright, distant glow of the city. The contrast between my two recent passengers, Sarah and Mark, was stark. One grieving a definitive, tragic ending, the other struggling with an indefinite, necessary absence. Both, however, were unified by the pain of separation. I felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, a smooth ride and a moment of genuine connection with two lost souls. This period of quiet, solo driving served as the decelerating trigger, a necessary emotional plateau before the next story. It's like clearing the stage for the next act, allowing the echoes of the previous performance to fade. I took the long way back into town, enjoying the empty road and the soft, steady rhythm of the car. It was past midnight now, the witching hour when the city sheds its busy daytime mask and reveals its deeper, stranger self. That's when the truly interesting fares start pinging the app. The night workers, the party leftovers, and the people wrestling with problems too big to wait until morning. The next request came from a neighborhood I rarely visit, a cluster of sprawling, architecturally distinct mansions tucked away on a hill overlooking the harbor. This area wasn't just wealthy, it was old money wealthy. The name on the screen was simply MA, no photo, just initials. I drove through the silent, tree-lined streets, past gates and hedges that suggested privacy and immense security. I pulled up to a house that looked less like a home and more like a small museum, columned, imposing, and completely dark, except for a single, warm light spilling from a second-story window. A figure emerged from the front door almost instantly, as if they had been waiting right behind it. It was a young woman, maybe 25 or 26, dressed sharply in an expensive-looking dark business suit despite the hour. She moved with a quick, nervous energy, clutching a leather portfolio so tightly her knuckles were white. She slid into the back seat, and this time, the door did slam, a sharp, percussive sound in the quiet night air, snapping the peaceful atmosphere like a twig. "Thank you. Please, just take the quickest route to the airport Terminal B," she instructed, her voice high and tight, bordering on frantic. She didn't offer a greeting, didn't make eye contact in the mirror, and immediately pulled out her phone, scrolling rapidly, her face illuminated by the harsh blue light. The destination was the international terminal, a sudden flight, at this hour. The tension in the car was immediate and high, like a plucked, vibrating wire. This was the first spark of the rising emotional arc, urgency and palpable stress. Something significant was happening, and it wasn't good. I confirmed the route and pulled out. I could feel the frantic energy radiating off her, the quick breaths, the restless tapping of her foot. I noticed the faint scent of expensive perfume mixing with something else, a metallic tang that often accompanies high anxiety, or maybe even fear. We drove in silence for a few minutes. I resisted the urge to pry, knowing that with this level of stress, she would either explode or self-destruct. My job was to get her safely to the terminal, but I was also an involuntary witness to a crisis. She finally tossed her phone onto the seat next to her with a frustrated huff. She raked a hand through her perfectly styled hair, disrupting it slightly. "I can't believe this," she muttered, not to me, but to the closed window. "After everything. All those years." I offered a small, neutral opening, a crack in the door of silence. "Tough evening for a trip to the airport, M.A. Hopefully it's not too much trouble." She laughed, a short, bitter bark of sound. "Trouble? No, Arthur, this isn't trouble. This is a catastrophe. This is the sound of my entire life collapsing into a pile of very expensive ash." She leaned forward, her voice dropping, taking on a conspiratorial, almost desperate tone. This was the first peak of the emotional crescendo in this ride, the need to unburden herself to a stranger. "I'm running away," she confessed, the words spilling out fast. "I know how ridiculous that sounds, but I'm catching the first flight to Geneva. One way. I have to go before the papers start printing, before the warrants are issued." My grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. This was a jump from simple stress to potential criminal activity. My heart rate picked up, a quick internal trigger of alarm and moral discomfort. I quickly reminded myself, my job is to drive. I'm not the police, a priest, or a therapist. I'm merely a vessel. "Warrants?" I asked carefully, keeping my voice level and calm, projecting an unbothered exterior. "I'm an investment manager. she explained, her voice thick with self-contempt. High-end firm. I started young. I was brilliant. I was ruthless. And I made a lot of people a lot of money. They called me a prodigy. I thought I was untouchable. She paused, taking a ragged breath. But the market is a cruel mistress, Arthur. And when it demanded more than I could ethically give, I decided to borrow a little. Just a little. A temporary loan, you know, from the client accounts to cover a bad position. I was going to pay it back, I swear. I had the whole strategy mapped out. She pounded her fist softly on the seat cushion. But the little grew and grew. And now, the hole is too big to fill. They found the anomaly yesterday morning. They're calling it embezzlement. They're calling it fraud. I'm calling it a stupid, desperate mistake made by someone who thought they had to be perfect. The raw desperation in her voice was the deepest emotional trigger of the night. It wasn't about love or death. It was about ambition, pressure, and the shattering realization of a self-inflicted wound. The pressure to succeed had literally broken her. The pressure to be perfect can make you do very imperfect things, I mused, the old man philosopher in me speaking. It sounds like you were running on empty, M.A. Empty doesn't even begin to cover it. I haven't slept properly in 3 months. I was terrified the whole time, checking every email, jumping at every phone call. I built this glittering cage around myself, Arthur, and now I have to leave the country just to avoid getting locked in a real one. Her voice cracked, finally showing a hint of genuine tears. She pointed vaguely toward the mansions we were leaving behind. That house? It was supposed to be mine. It was the proof, the trophy that said, I made it. But now, I'm running from it with nothing but a carry-on and a one-way ticket. I felt a wave of pity and recognition of misplaced value. All that effort, all that brilliance, channeled into a pursuit that ended in utter failure and flight. I slowed the car slightly, making the movement deliberate, letting the pacing decelerate to match my reflective tone. This was the midpoint deceleration, a moment to process the weight of the confession. Success comes at a price, M.A., I said quietly. But sometimes, we get the price wrong. We think the price is just hours and focus. But the true price is often your soul, your peace of mind, and when you pay that price, you lose sight of the line between what's right and what's necessary. She sighed, a long, mournful sound, staring out the window at the flashing emergency lights of an ambulance heading in the opposite direction, a perfect, ironic symbol of a crisis she couldn't fix. I didn't think I had a choice, she whispered. Everyone was watching. Everyone was expecting me to win. The shame of failure was worse than the fear of illegality. Until now. We were pulling into the airport complex. The huge, sterile environment of the international terminal loomed ahead, a gateway to escape, or maybe just a cold, lonely purgatory. The flight is the easy part, M.A., I said, offering a final gentle dose of perspective as I pulled up to the curb of Terminal B. The hard part is learning how to live with the person you became when you decided to take that first loan. That's the passenger you're going to have to live with every day in every new country. She didn't immediately move. She just stared at the entrance. I know, she said, her voice small again, like a young girl's. She reached for her wallet, but then hesitated. She looked up at my reflection in the mirror, truly looking at me for the first time. Arthur, she said, thank you for listening to my worst, most shameful secret. I don't even know what I'm going to do now. You're going to survive, I told her simply. And maybe, away from all these expectations, you can figure out who you are without the trophies. Go on, don't look back. She gave a quick, sharp nod, pulled out a wad of bills and placed them on the passenger seat, far more than the fare. She grabbed her portfolio, opened the door, and was gone, swallowed up by the late-night flow of travelers rushing toward their various destinations, hers being the most desperate of all. I sat there for a long minute, watching her speed walk into the terminal, the image of her frantic flight imprinted in my mind. The air felt stale, tinged with anxiety and regret. It was a cold, hard end to her story. I felt a profound sense of exhaustion, a final decelerating trigger after witnessing such intense self-destruction. The air was undeniably colder as I left the airport, the chill a physical manifestation of the empty space M.A. had left behind. Dealing with the sheer, naked desperation of a life in ruins always takes a piece out of you. You absorb the energy of their panic, the toxicity of their shame. I drove slowly, winding back toward the central business district, needing the familiar cityscape to ground me. The emotional intensity had peaked with MA, and now the rhythm demanded a substantial deceleration, a deep valley of calm reflection to make the next ascent impactful. I stopped at a closed gas station, pulling into a dark corner of the lot just to stretch my legs and breathe the cold, damp air. I thought about the 3 stories I carried now: Sarah's quiet, abiding grief, Mark's honest, painful regret, and M.A.'s frantic, self-inflicted ruin. They were 3 sides of the same human coin, the struggle against loss, be it loss by death, loss by distance, or loss by choice. That feeling of witnessing the profound tapestry of human experience, even in the most transactional of settings, was the grounding emotional trigger, a sober, wise awareness that defines the old man driver. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I started driving again. The city was almost entirely asleep now, except for the faint pulse around the university area, where life and deadlines often run late. My phone pinged again. The pickup was near a small, well-known jazz club downtown. The name was Eliza. I pulled up to the curb. The club's awning cast a warm, sepia glow onto the sidewalk. Eliza was standing alone, holding a guitar case that looked as old and well-loved as my own worn-out driving gloves. She wore a simple black dress and a tired, wistful expression. She got in the front seat, which was unusual, but immediately put me at ease. People who choose the front seat often want connection or at least camaraderie. The slam of her guitar case settling gently by her feet felt more like an introduction than an intrusion. "Good morning, Arthur," she said, her voice rich and smoky, carrying the residue of music and late nights. It had a comforting low register, the kind of voice that sounds exactly like a quiet saxophone solo. "Good morning, Eliza. Rough night?" "The best kind of rough," she smiled faintly, adjusting her seatbelt. "Creative exhaustion. It was a good crowd tonight. Responsive. They really felt the blues." The destination was a modest apartment building across town. A short ride, likely just her home after a gig. The initial atmosphere was entirely different from the others, weary but peaceful, saturated with the quiet satisfaction of a night's work well done. This was the initial, gentle upward turn of the emotional arc, moving from the intensity of fear to the contemplative quiet of art. "I heard a lot of jazz in my day," I told her, pulling out onto the deserted main street. "Used to drive a lot of musicians back in the 70s and 80s. That sound, it gets into your bones." "It has to," she said, turning slightly to face me. "If it doesn't get into your bones, you're just playing notes. It has to come from something real, something you felt." "And what did you feel tonight, Eliza?" I asked, genuinely curious. She sighed, a long, drawn-out exhalation that sounded like a breath held for too long. "Tonight, I felt regret. That was the fuel for the set." The word hit me with a familiar, yet unexpected force. Regret. It was the common denominator, the underlying theme of the night, connecting her to Mark, and even to M.A. This sudden shared theme acted as the main emotional trigger, the realization that every human is running from, or living with, a burden of regret. Regret is a powerful motivator, I observed. It drives people to change, or sometimes it paralyzes them. "It paralyzed me for years," she admitted, running a finger along the worn edge of her guitar case. "I'm 58 now. I've been playing since I was 9, and for 30 years I worked a soul-sucking desk job, accountant believe it or not, just to pay the mortgage and keep the lights on. I played the safe game." She paused, looking out the window at her own reflection overlaid with the passing streetlights. "I had a chance when I was 22, a real chance. A manager from New York heard me play, offered me a deal, a tour, the whole thing. I turned it down." "Why?" I asked, knowing the answer was often simple and profoundly sad. "My father. He was a good man, but a realist. He said music was a hobby, not a living. He said the road was dangerous, the industry was brutal. He begged me to be practical. So I took the sensible job, got the sensible house, and bought my sensible shoes. I built a safe life, but it wasn't mine." This was the core of her pain. the regret of the unchosen path, a powerful, relatable, emotional peak. It's the pain of looking back at a fork in the road and knowing you took the path of fear instead of the path of fire. It's a hard position for a young person, I empathized, to choose between the love of a parent and the love of your own calling. But the music never left me, Arthur, she continued, her voice gaining strength, shifting from regret to resurgence. It stayed right here. She tapped her guitar case, a silent passenger for 3 decades. Then, 5 years ago, my father passed, and I realized I was still living his life, still following his fear. And you decided to make a change? I quit the next day, she said firmly, walked into my boss's office, handed him my notice, and drove straight to the music store to buy new strings. The mortgage be damned. I realized that the real danger wasn't being broke on the road. It was waking up every day and feeling like I was betraying the only true thing about myself. This was the shift in the emotional tempo, the rising acceleration, moving from the pain of regret to the fierce power of self-reclamation. It was the exhilarating feeling of finally making the hard, right choice. That took guts, Eliza, I commended her. To risk stability for authenticity, it took desperation first, and then guts, she corrected with a wry chuckle. But now, when I play those blues, they're not just notes. They're the sound of 30 years of suppressed passion finally being set free. They feel real because I finally paid the real price for them. Not money, but the comfort of certainty. We were nearing her apartment building. I pulled up slowly, taking time to savor the moment of shared, hard-won wisdom. So, you're happy now? I asked her gently. She considered the question, looking me straight in the eye in the mirror. I'm not happy in the way a commercial tells you to be. I'm exhausted. My bank account is often thin, but I am fundamentally completely satisfied. And that, Arthur, is a much richer feeling. Satisfaction over security, I nodded. A very wise choice for the midnight shift. She smiled warmly, reaching to unbuckle her seatbelt. She looked down at the guitar case. You know, I don't mind the late nights. The people who come out at this hour, they listen differently. They're looking for something real, just like I am. She opened the door, pulling her case out with a soft, scraping sound. Thank you for the ride and the therapy, Arthur. You've got good ears. You're welcome, Eliza. Keep playing those real blues. She stepped out, and I watched her walk toward the entrance, her silhouette and the familiar shape of the guitar case disappearing into the quiet building. The scent of her perfume and the lingering sense of genuine, hard-fought satisfaction remained in the car, a powerful, clean feeling that cleansed the anxiety M.A. had left. The story of Eliza was an antidote to the despair of the previous fares, a necessary decelerating trigger that provided hope and perspective, returning the narrative to a state of equilibrium and quiet wisdom. The drive away from Eliza's apartment felt lighter, imbued with the quiet resonance of her hard-won satisfaction. Her story, the deliberate choice to abandon security for passion, left a sense of clarity in the car. It was the first truly positive resolution I'd witnessed all night, and it provided a much-needed emotional plateau and deceleration. It wasn't relief exactly, but a solid sense of hope that even the deepest regret can be transformed into purpose. The city was now deep in the quietest hours, the pre-dawn stillness, where only the street sweepers and the truly lost are active. I decided to head toward the all-night diner near the docks, a place where I knew I could always find a quick coffee and the occasional last-minute fare, usually dock workers or early risers. As I cruised down the main boulevard, the air felt scrubbed clean by the night and the emotional catharsis. My own thoughts turned inward, a natural reflection after so much external drama. I thought about the sheer volume of stories I carry, hundreds, maybe thousands of private moments shared in the anonymity of the back seat. Am I just a temporary confessor, or do these stories shape me? I think they keep me honest. They keep me from forgetting the constant, fragile struggle that is simply being human. That deep, quiet self-reflection served as the decelerating trigger, bringing the focus back to the narrator, the old man driving the car. The ping came through just as I was approaching the diner, not from the diner itself, but from an old 2-story motel just a few blocks away. the kind of place people rent by the week, with outside corridors and faded carpets. The name was Leonard. I pulled into the dimly lit parking lot. There was only one car parked near the designated room, a battered sedan covered in dust. Leonard was already outside, standing next to a huge rolling suitcase and a duffel bag, looking restless and out of place in the empty lot. He was a man in his late 60s, maybe 70, wearing a cheap, ill-fitting suit jacket over a wrinkled shirt. His face was lined not just with age but with constant worry. His eyes darted around, nervous, agitated. He was trying to look casual, but he was failing miserably. He loaded his own bags into the trunk before I could even get out, moving quickly, almost violently, and then slid into the back seat, closing the door with a hurried snap. "Airport, please, Arthur. Any terminal, doesn't matter, just the first flight out of state. I'm paying cash." He didn't wait for a reply. He reached into his pocket and placed a thick, folded wad of cash, not just a tip, but a substantial sum, on the center console between the front seats. "That should cover the fare, the tip, and keep the questions brief," he said, his voice husky, betraying a chain smoker's history. His eyes, catching mine in the rearview mirror, were cold, hard, and calculating. Nothing like the sorrow in Sarah's eyes or the exhaustion in Mark's. This was fear that had curdled into paranoia. The sheer transactional nature and the blatant attempt to buy silence immediately set off the next emotional trigger: suspicion and unease. I knew instantly that this wasn't just a man running from regret. This was a man running from consequences. This was the start of the final emotional crescendo of the night, dealing with something genuinely illicit. I picked up the cash, noted the large amount, and tucked it into the console box. "The airport is a fixed price, Leonard, but I appreciate the generosity. I still need a terminal for the GPS, sir. Just aim for the domestic departures. Gate 4050, I don't care. Just move." I pulled out, trying to maintain my usual calm pace, but his palpable tension was infectious. His entire body was rigid, pressed against the back seat like he expected to be yanked out at any second. He kept glancing into the side mirrors, watching the road behind us. "Long trip, Leonard?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle, trying to de-escalate the situation through sheer normalcy. "It's the end of a long trip, Arthur," he corrected sharply, "and the start of a new one. A permanent one." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Look, I know what you're thinking. An old man, mid-morning flight, suitcase full of money. You think I robbed a bank, don't you?" I kept my eyes on the road. "I've learned not to jump to conclusions, Leonard. Everyone has their reasons for taking a flight in the middle of the night. My reason is complicated," he scoffed. "I ran a business, a small, successful enterprise. Nothing illegal, understand. Just creative accounting. For 30 years, I made a life for myself, built up a retirement, gave my kids a good start." He was spinning a familiar yarn, the self-justification of a man who crossed lines he shouldn't have. "But 2 years ago, the business hit the skids. A competitor undercut me, regulators were breathing down my neck, and my partner, he was an idiot, a complete trusting fool." He paused, a chilling, humorless smile twisting his lips. "So, I did what I had to do. I took what was mine, and a little of what was his. Not a loan, not a mistake, a clean transfer. It was a matter of survival, Arthur. His family had savings. Mine was dwindling. This was the chilling difference. M.A.'s confession was fueled by shame and regret for a mistake. Leonard's was fueled by cold rationalization of a deliberate betrayal. This profound lack of empathy was the escalating emotional trigger, pushing the tension to a new, unsettling height. I felt a moral repugnance that the other fares hadn't provoked. "And your partner?" I asked, my voice low. Leonard shrugged. A brittle, careless movement. "He found out yesterday, called me screaming. He's ruined. I heard him crying on the phone, begging. Said his wife would leave him, that he'd have nothing left." "And what did you tell him?" "I hung up," Leonard admitted, the confession delivered with startling detachment. "He made his choices. I made mine. He chose trust, I chose survival. Simple as that." The lack of remorse was the final, sharp, emotional peak of the night. It felt darker, dirtier than anything else. This man was running away with the spoils, completely untouched by the devastation he had caused a friend. "It sounds like you took more than money, Leonard," I said, unable to keep the subtle judgment out of my tone. "You took his piece too." He shifted uncomfortably in the seat, finally showing a crack in his composure. "I took what I needed. You think it's easy to be old and broke? To face the end of your life without a buffer? No, Arthur. I earned this buffer by working 30 years for a fool, and now you're going to live your final years looking over your shoulder." I countered gently but firmly. "You bought the ticket, Leonard, but you didn't buy peace. You traded your freedom for fear." My words seemed to land. He looked genuinely rattled, his eyes widening slightly. He stopped scanning the road behind us and started staring blankly ahead. "What do you know about it?" he demanded, but the force was gone from his voice. "I know about unfinished stories," I replied. "The ones that keep chasing you, the ones that don't end when you leave town. You're leaving your partner ruined, Leonard. That's a story that will cling to you, tighter than any suitcase you carry." We were arriving at the airport. I pulled up to the domestic departures curb, finding a quiet spot near the end. I kept the engine running. Leonard sat motionless for a moment, the cold reality of his solitary escape seeming to hit him. "I had no choice," he mumbled again, the defiant justification now sounding like a pathetic plea. "We always have a choice, Leonard. We choose what we value. You chose a suitcase of cash over your conscience. That choice is what you'll be sitting with on that flight and in that new country." He opened the door, the cool air flooding the car. He looked old suddenly, defeated. He grabbed his duffel bag, but paused before retrieving the large suitcase. He looked back at me, a flicker of something, maybe genuine fear, maybe fleeting regret, crossing his face. "Just go, Arthur. I have to go." He slammed the door, and I pulled away before he could get the large suitcase out of the trunk, leaving him standing there with only the duffel bag and the cold comfort of his stolen cash. As I drove off, I saw him struggling to open the trunk with the key, his agitation returning in full force. I drove away fast, the sudden, deliberate action serving as the final, sharp, decelerating trigger, physically moving away from the toxic energy of Leonard. I kept driving until the airport's fluorescent lights were a distant memory. I was finished for the night, the weight of Leonard's ugly story settling over me like a shroud. The morning was beginning to announce itself, not with sunshine, but with a thin, metallic light that pushed back the deep black of the night. I was miles away from the airport, parked illegally for a moment near a quiet neighborhood park, just letting the engine run and gathering my thoughts. Leonard's energy, cold, paranoid, and utterly lacking in conscience, was the hardest to shake. It was the darkest note in a night full of difficult chords. I reached out and manually opened the windows, letting the crisp, cold pre-dawn air scour the car, physically driving out the lingering scent of anxiety and bad choices. The sheer finality of MA's frantic flight and Leonard's ugly betrayal required a long, deep deceleration, a moment of profound quiet to process the moral ambiguities of the night. The city was slowly waking up. I saw an early jogger, a man walking his dog, and delivery trucks starting their rounds. The change in atmosphere from the desperate silence of midnight to the quiet industry of mourning was the final emotional trigger. The powerful realization that despite all the chaos, grief, and crime I witnessed, the world keeps turning, and life, in its mundane persistence, always offers a chance for renewal. I started the long, familiar drive back to my own small house. It was just a few miles now. As I drove, the events of the night began to settle into their proper places, becoming stories rather than raw emotional burdens. I thought of Sarah, already awake, perhaps having that solitary piece of chocolate cake, turning her immense grief into a private, powerful act of remembrance for Ben. I hoped the acknowledgement of his life and her pain had granted her a fraction of peace. I thought of Mark, likely asleep now in a truck stop bunk, maybe dreaming of Lily and the fortress he would tell her he was building. His struggle was an honorable one, a testament to the quiet, grinding effort of a father who sacrifices presence for provision. I hoped he held on to the image of the dragon fight until he saw her again. I thought of M.A., probably thousands of feet over the Atlantic by now, sitting alone with her portfolio and her shame. Her story was a cautionary tale about the illusion of perfection and the corrosive nature of fear. Her redemption wouldn't come from distance, but from confronting the person in the mirror, a journey far longer than any flight to Geneva. And I thought of Eliza, the musician, probably just now falling into a deep sleep, the melody of her hard-won authenticity still vibrating in the air. Her choice to trade security for satisfaction was the closest thing to a moral victory I'd seen all night, a reminder that it's never too late to reclaim your own life. The last passenger, Leonard, was the ghost I needed to lay to rest. His lack of empathy was the most disturbing memory. I realized I hadn't just left him standing at the airport. I had left him with his own unfinished story, a perpetual chase scene with his ruined conscience. That, I concluded, was a far heavier punishment than anything the law could impose. My own street came into view. I pulled into the driveway, the familiar crunch of gravel under the tires a welcome sound. I turned off the engine, and the resulting silence was absolute, a perfect neutral quiet. It was the sound of my own home, my own peace. I sat there for a moment, simply absorbing the silence. I am just a driver. I am not a judge or a healer or an investigator. But for a few hours in the dead of night, I was a repository for secrets, a temporary vessel for human crisis. That's the real job. The miles are just the fee. I reached for my keys and my bag, ready to end my shift. But as I opened the door, my eyes fell on the center console. Leonard's wad of cash was still sitting there, tucked where I had put it earlier. It was tainted, ill-gotten, and I felt a strong physical urge to toss it out the window. Instead, I picked it up. It was a substantial amount. Too much to keep, too much to simply discard. I thought about Mark and Lily. I thought about Eliza's thin bank account. I thought about the thousands of people out there grinding through long, honest shifts. I reached for my phone and opened the app. I pulled up Mark's trip details. I've never done this before, but this money felt like a kind of toxic residue that needed to be cleansed, transferred into something good. Leonard bought silence, but I could make his money speak a different language. I didn't use all of it, just a significant portion. I sent a massive anonymous tip to Mark, adding a note that only he would see, a contribution to the secret fortress. Then, I did the same for Sarah, splitting the remainder of the cash, a contribution to a foundation for Ben's memory. I kept only the standard fare. The rest was dispersed, a small private act of moral rebalancing. The money was gone, but the heavy feeling in my chest had finally lifted. This act of quiet, decisive redistribution provided the final accelerating and resolving trigger, a surge of personal control and moral closure. I didn't fix the world, but I fixed my car. I finally got out of the car, stretching my back, feeling the stiffness of a long night. I looked up at the rising sun, now a pale, gentle orange on the horizon. A new day, a new beginning for everyone, even for the old man who simply drives the roads between their stories. I paused on the threshold of my home, the keys cool in my hand. I knew I would be back out there tonight. The roads would be waiting, and so would the next round of confessions.